Welcome back to God of War. We are now pulling the two areas together by means of gigantic horses.
This mechanism is bonkers.
All the mechanisms in this area are bonkers.
It is epic.
Bonkers. Not epic. Bonkers. It's too ridiculous to take seriously as epic.
E-P-I, and because of these times, going to spell that with a K, yeah.
Epic. I will say that
horses? I thought they were statues. They are statues.
Statues, yeah.
How did Kratos know that whipping them would get them moving?
Yeah. I will say that one thing I definitely appreciate about this game over the original is that the environments are much more varied. I got pretty sick of that one temple by the end of God of War. And
everyone got sick of that one temple.
Everybody hates Pandora's temple.
Yeah. It's not just the fact that you're there so long, it's what you're doing while you're there. It gets tedious as hell.
And there's a lot more cutscenes in this game, too, I noticed as well.
Yeah, the budget was definitely higher for this entry. And, you know, in the PlayStation 2 era, Sony was really good about funding exclusives. And, you know, to an extent they still are. You know, but...
you know, it just kind of feels a little bit less so because... Like, not that it is less so, it just feels less so.
It's more like they're leaning a little more heavily on one company for their exclusives than they used to. In this case, it's Naughty Dog with Uncharted and The Last of Us.
I think what also hurts is that you've got Sony also has a lot of those like timed exclusive sort of things, or those things like Destiny, where they'll push like, oh, this is the best experience on PlayStation, but you can still play it on Xbox. So it's like they're trying to tout it as an exclusive when it's not actually an exclusive.
They don't have that problem nearly as bad as the Xbox does.
Okay.
Console exclusive, which means it's on PC.
My favorite so far has been that, you know, and Microsoft tried to have Rise of the Tomb Raider as a timed exclusive to compete with Uncharted, which failed on two levels. The first being that Uncharted stays exclusive, and the second one being that, you know, pretty much everyone who was interested in Tomb Raider in the first place probably played their first Tomb Raider game on a PlayStation.
I think a lot of people just straight up waited too for the game because there was.
Yeah. Well, you're ultimately not buying a console for one game.
Yeah, but like the thing about that was though is that it created a situation where the people who wanted to play it on PS4 knew that if they waited to do that, they'd be getting like the complete edition with all the DLC and stuff, which they did. So. You know,
and it wasn't like such a huge game that was one of those, oh my god, I have to play it right now sort of things.
Yeah. The Tomb Raider reboot never quite hit that level of success.
I mean it was still successful, just not as much as Square Enix would have wanted. Which is like $20
it eventually,
billion.
you know, their complaint over how many million constituted a sales failure was premature. The game sold enough within a specific period of months. It just, quote unquote, didn't succeed within like the launch window time period.
Square has issues. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I think they were also expecting more from Tomb Raider because it's such an old school classic franchise. But the thing is, like, they made a game that's so barely recognizable as Tomb Raider, like barely even in the same genre even, and and acted surprised when it took some time for people to get used to it.
Tomb Raider also doesn't...
similar happening to God of War?
You know, I don't think so, because I think Tomb Raider didn't have the reputation God of War still has. Because God of War, Tomb Raider had the reputation of not having... Because Tomb Raider had a couple of really bad games. God of War never really had a bad game.
At that point, yeah, I would say like it has some of the problem, because Tomb Raider is more of a well, not fast-paced, but like more of an adventure platformer kind of deal. Slow and ponderous in the old days, a bit faster paced in the Anniversary Legends Underworld trilogy. But the thing is, when it became an Uncharted style game, its platforming action focus completely flipped on its head, and that turned a fair number of people off. Because, you know, the thing about Tomb Raider is about traversing environments. That's the main focus of the gameplay up until the reboot. Up until the second reboot, technically. So it's like...
I'm sorry, I just go to see Kratos continuously spinning.
It's like if they rebooted Super Mario 64 to be about punching things with occasional jumping, you know? Like, that's the kind of change that we're talking about. Oh god, this area is very beautiful.
Yeah.
That's some pretty decent water effects for the time.
Nice water.
Well, the only, like, PS2 era game that I can think of that has, like...
Always something behind the waterfall.
Of course there is. The only PS2 era game that I can think of that has really, really good-looking water is not even interactive water that you can jump in. It's Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles on GameCube. That game looks absolutely fucking fantastic.
I used to think for the longest time... Onimusha 2 had some of the best looking water on the PS2, but then I realized, oh wait, it's a pre-rendered video.
Yeah.
Man, but water, rain, snow, weather effects, those were graphics things that were being pretty heavily pushed in this particular era of game development.
Particles.
It's like, yeah, whenever game developers get a new toy, they want to play with it as much as possible.
It's like, how does the rain look?
Nice rain.
I don't know, ask on a car.
Yeah, I was about to mention Metal Gear Solid 2, because that was, like, a really big deal graphically at the time, the tanker section. Like, not only did they have this
that thing looked damn good on video back then.
Yeah. It's like, not only did they have a really good rain effect for the time, but they also had, like, individually animated effects for when you shot different things in the environment. You know, before we had Havoc for everything, you know? So, those were the days. The faces still look damn hot, like really, really wonky, but you know, you can't have everything.
Everything has limits, no matter how much you don't want them to.
Yeah, but limits were made to be broken, Ryan.
Not in a computer space. No, when you have limits, you have limits.
Cloud would disagree with you.
Doing your wordplay.
Yeah, that's like the only reason I'm here.
Ted's limit break, I guess, would be punishment.
Yeah.
Okay, he agrees.
His level 4 limit break would be eternal punishment.
For a second there, I thought she was giving you a double middle finger.
Yeah,
it's like, fuck you, Kratos.
It's impressive when a PS2 era game has, you know, really good lighting, because the lighting has to be done in what I think is like a really individualized way, like every area very specifically lighted.
Yeah, there weren't. I don't think I think this was before the widespread advent of, like, I don't want to call them mass-produced, but engines like Unreal or Unity.
Yeah, global illumination was a new thing around the time Sonic Unleashed was happening. Well, it wasn't a new thing, but it was a new thing in gaming. Like, it was something you only really saw in CG movies at that point. Man, being able to pull something that big when it's, like, knee-deep in water is the most unrealistic thing. It's hilarious.
It is the power of a
Power of a demigod.
but that hasn't been retconned into the story yet.
So, wait, Kratos becomes a demigod instead?
Well, if he's a demigod by proxy, I mean...
He's a son of a god and a human.
He's a son of a god, yeah, and a human.
Oh, okay.
That makes him a demigod.
Oh, yeah, you're right. When do you think that they added, like, did you think when they were writing God of War 2, they were thinking...
Well, no, technically it's something from God of War 1.
It is?
From an alternate, not an alternate ending, but an extras you could unlock. It gives you insight onto other things, and one of the things you can unlock is a text thing where apparently Kratos goes to his dying mother, and she says Zeus is his father or something.
Oh, okay.
It's something that technically exists, but was not really put into the game.
Huh. Yeah. Okay.
You know, that kind of...
Which unfortunately means by 2 and 3, it's the only way they can... You would have to retcon it in order to implement that into the story.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is all over gaming. Storytelling elements that were never finished or couldn't be implemented in the game without breaking flow. Like, there are a ton of games, even RPGs, the really story-heavy genre, have that problem of not being able to fit everything. Like, you don't even get the origin story of the final boss of Persona 3 unless you read, like, some supplementary book. And, like,
you don't get Final Fantasy IX, you just don't learn it ever.
And Xenogears, in particular, this is really interesting. Xenogears was originally conceived as, like, I think the 5th episode of a longer story. And they never made any of the other episodes. All they did was make, like they detailed what their plan for the other episodes of the story was in a supplementary book.
That was another thing with Xenosaga. Xenosaga was originally
supposed to be 5 episodes, yeah, but after the first one wasn't successful, Namco said, okay, we're going to let you finish this project, but you're going to have to do it in less than 5 games.
I believe it's 3, right?
3, yes.
Yeah.
And the second game is actually comparatively light on story because they overcompensated for the complaints of the cutscenes being too long, so there's a lot of voiceover narration fade-throughs of the storyline. It's not the best.
To be fair, the cutscenes in Xenosaga 1 were like an hour long, weren't they?
Yeah, they were ridiculous. But Xenosaga 3 hits a nice balance, and you know, if you can get all 3 games and play them one after the other, the complete story is really nice.
Pucker up, Kratos.
For a stone statue, this thing has really malleable lips.
If you're saying you can't defy fate, then how am I defying fate by being here?
She blows up.
The thing about statues that have moving faces is that I always expect is that, like, it only ever looks and sounds right when, like, there's a real feeling of stone being forced to be flexible when it happens. Like a gravelly sound effect with each movement, maybe. I realize that you can't get too detailed with that stuff in the PlayStation 2, but still.
Hooray, we punched the statue in the face really hard.
Good job, Kratos.
I'm awesome.
Kratos is just really, really angry. He's like Doom Guy, only he talks more.
And that's why we love Doom Guy more. He doesn't bother with anything like heritage or plot or anything. He just sees demons, he kills demons.
Doom 2016 has a plot going on. It's just that the main character's interaction with it is almost a joke, in a sense. Like
it is a joke within the context of its own game.
Yeah,
yes.
like the only thing he ever expresses is like anger at the situation around him. And you know, you can interpret that in a serious emotional way, but you can also interpret it as a meta joke, and it works both ways. It's a really fun bit of video game storytelling in that sense.
The Doom. Why is the Doom Guy even there? Is he just like...
Because he is Doom Guy.
Because he is Doom Guy, okay.
In the context of Doom 2016, it's because he was like entombed in this kind of sarcophagus, presumably...
Which I think is a thing that happened at the end of Doom 3.
Yeah, presumably in the demon world in some sense. And at the beginning, he's waking up, breaking out of it, and putting on his armor.
This is what it's like to be free.
I don't know whether or not there is like a continuity between Doom 2016 and the other games, though.
It references stuff that happened before it, but not a lot.
Like Doom 3 is different in the sense that, you know, the protagonist there does talk, and there is...
Yeah, it references 3, but in terms of plot, it doesn't reference anything else, because ultimately, Doom 1 and all of its expansions for the PC at the time basically were, oh, there are demons on this Mars facility. There's something going on here. It's just excuses to get you there and shoot stuff.
Yeah, like you can't really take the old Doom games seriously from a storytelling point of view, even in the context of a video game anyway, because this was a time before environments in video games were designed to look feasible. They were literally just labyrinths.
Yeah.
The one thing is, I'm just really glad that the Doom Bible didn't actually end up being a thing, because it's like really edge dark and bad. So
Yeah.
Special.
Well,
extra
I mean,
edition.
it's gotten to the point where Doom 2016 references Rip and Tear.
What's Rip and Tear?
From the comics.
Oh, from the comics. Okay.
The really bad over-the-top comics.
Well, Rip and Tear.
I'm radioactive. That can't be good.
Yeah, Rip and Tear is like one of the very first lines spoken.
Yeah, it's in the
game.
very. Yeah, it's one of the first lines in the game.
Do they reference the Dwayne Johnson movie ever?
No.
Aw, that stinks.
But that was kind of its own weird thing in general, so.
Don't even get me started on the Doom novelization. Oh, God.
He walked, he jumped, he shooted.
No.
He walked,
no,
he jumped, he
it's,
turned
it's,
left, he
it's
shooted.
better. It's better than that. It's the most cracktastic thing involving cults and shit. It's great.
It's just 36 pages of some guy phonetically singing the Doom song.
No.
No.
God bless them. God bless them. They tried, and they just sort of lost their sanity along the way, and wrote the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, when they were still doing video game novelizations regularly, you got some pretty interesting stuff.
I know Metal
Like-
Gear Solid had a novelization.
Yeah.
I have actually seen it in the bookstore.
That thing practically is a novel, so yes.
Yeah. But the thing about like video game novelizations is that sometimes they went really above and beyond to try and turn the story into something akin to the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is more or less what the Doom book did. And sometimes you get stuff like S.D. Perry's Resident Evil novel series, which plays the video game straight to the point where it's actually criticizing the villains for being so weird. Like,
Well, they are being weird, so.
like yeah, like the novelization of Resident Evil 1 plays the Spencer Mansion completely as it is in the game, including all the weird mechanisms and puzzle things, and it works surprisingly well. And it does the same thing with the police station in Resident Evil 2.
Huh. Weird.
I almost feel like you really can't do a Resident Evil story without at least some, like, acknowledgement that, yeah, this is exactly the kind of story you're in for, you know?
Yeah, but you know...
I guess we'll see what they do with the new six movie deal for the next Resident Evil series.
Yeah, but you know, the thing about the S.D. Perry Resident Evil novels, though, is that for the most part they work. They're not like super awesome, excellent literature or anything. They're just sort of, you know, weekend novels that you read when you're bored. And
I hear that's the case for a lot of the Halo novels as well.
Yeah, but you know, it's good. It's good stuff. A couple of them are a bit weak, especially the original ones, and the author seems to have a serious thing for Rebecca Chambers, and this was before Resident Evil 0. But the actual, you gotta read them to believe them, to be honest. And they are all available on Kindle, so it's not hard.
I can't wait for the God of
Didn't read
War
it.
novels. Those are going to be fantastic.
He swung a sword at them. He swung a sword at him. Grr. Zeus swung a sword at him.
My wife is dead. It's
No, but
not-
you know, you can write a good novel with almost nothing but just really good action scenes if you're good enough. The only problem with that is the only author that I've ever personally read who has that particular talent at that degree to make it work is R.A. Salvatore.
Yeah, it's just
So-
how good you are painting word pictures as opposed to like character
Painting pictures.
Yeah.
and stuff.
Like R.A. Salvatore is great at action. Like, he writes some of the best action scenes that I've ever seen in a book, ever, and can almost keep his Drizzt novels going on purely that. He doesn't, though. Like, God bless him. He tries to have this. He tries to have a story that's always worth telling. You know.
Are those still going?
Yeah, they're still going.
Damn.
They are still going, and they aren't showing any signs of stopping. It's kind of silly. Like, he killed off Dritz's entire party some like years and years ago, books and books ago, and eventually found a way to reincarnate them into new bodies so that they could come back. That's the main reason I haven't kept up with them, is that things tend to go in circles.
Well, that's what happens when you've got a story that goes on for too long. That was actually my biggest...
It's like history, it rhymes.
That was my biggest problem when I was trying to read the Walking Dead comics. I've never watched the TV show, but my biggest issue with the Walking Dead comics is that after a point, they just kept on repeating the same story points over and over again.
Yeah.
Oh, they find this new place. Oh, this place has zombies in them. Oh no, somebody who used to live in that place is a douchebag. Oh no, we gotta run away. Oh no, someone loses a limb.
It's not so much the same story points, but like when you have these characters that exist in this long, continuous story, and once you get to a point where it feels like the characters can't change because the story needs to continue, you wind up repeating the same themes without any resolution. And the result of that is that, like, the Hunter's Blades trilogy had this whole storyline about Drizzt coming to terms with the fact that his friends are going to die, and he's going to have to deal with that at some point. But then, after Hunter's Blades finishes, like 3 or 4 novels later, his friends actually do die, and he goes through the whole rigmarole again. And it's like, okay, yeah, we really should have had this resolved already. It doesn't really feel like the character development was permanent, and that causes you to lose investment somewhat. And when the resolution of this is always his friends come back, it feels like you're just jerking me around at that point.
But do they have Dragon Balls? Is that why that happens?
No, they have gods and goddesses, and one of them, or two of them, decide to throw Drizzt to bone by bringing his friends back. It's complicated, and it's actually smarter than it sounds when I sum it up. When you actually read the stories involved, but it's like, for the long-term appeal of the story, it's a bit detrimental that it feels like the main character never really changes.